Good afternoon, friends and members of St. Martin Lutheran Church. This is Pastor Jim. Today it is Tuesday, July the 12th. So happy you could join us today. As we take a look at the scriptures for the week, we're going to be taking a look at Psalm 27 today, an amazing psalm of David. A psalm, really, we're going to find provides us with answers to how you and I can navigate a very dark and difficult world. David gives us the answers right here. It's almost, in a sense, it's David showing us how to look at life differently, to look at ourselves and ourselves in this world from a different vantage point. And from there, being able to prioritize, see what's most important, and most importantly, how you and I can endure and abide, and as St. Paul writes, stand firm in the armor of God. Special shout out to all of our young people and adult volunteers in Houston, Texas this week at the National Youth Gathering. I've been getting pictures from my own family. My wife and son are there, as well as many other young people from our church being led by Mr. Bickle. I think Frau's with them too. Prayers for them. They're having a great time, and hopefully they will be filled and be able to share some of that inspiration with us, who are, maybe you're in Michigan or somewhere else, but they travel all the way to Texas to go from 85 humid weather in Michigan to 100-degree weather in Houston. So if you're following along, we are reading Psalm 27, a psalm of David. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evildoers assail me to eat up my flesh, my adversaries and foes, it is they who stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war arise against me, yet I will be confident. One thing I have asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent. He will lift me high upon a rock. And now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry aloud. Be gracious to me and answer me. You have said, seek my face. My heart says to you, your face, Lord, do I seek. Hide not your face from me. Turn not your servant away in anger, O you who have been my help. Cast me not off, forsake me not, O God of my salvation. For my father and my mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me in. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me on a level path because of my enemies. Give me not up to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and they breathe out violence. I believe that I shall look upon the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, what David is doing in Psalm 27 is he's using the truths that God has given him as a rampart or a protection against the fear that is rising within him. So his fears are rising up, and he's looking to the truths put into his heart through faith by God to give him protection. And he's going to tell us is that when we seek after God, we find him, and because of that, we understand there's really no danger at all, that there's really nothing to fear. It's looking at life from a different vantage point. So David begins, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Although we often find Christ associated with light in the New Testament, this verse is the only one in the Old Testament where the direct application of the name of God is given to light. And of course, we know in John 1, verses 5 and 9, where Jesus is referred to as the light, that the light which enlightens Everyone is coming into the world. And as well, in the New Testament, light and salvation are promised to the Gentiles through the person of the work of the Messiah. We read that in, Paul quotes that in Acts 13. He quotes from Isaiah 49 that I will make you, the Messiah, Christ, a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth. That the Lord is the strength of my life, David says. Now, David was himself, as you know, a very experienced warrior. Nevertheless, he looked to God as the strength of his life. You know, and perhaps even Paul touched upon this writing in Ephesians when he said, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. You know, Paul wasn't just saying, be strong, you know, something we sometimes say to other people, well-meaning, but, you know, just buck up, be strong. No, Paul was saying, be strong in the power of his might, in the power of his might. And perhaps Paul was referencing David in Psalm 27. And then David says, you know, whom shall I fear? If God is my light and my salvation, then whom shall I fear? Of whom shall I be afraid? You know, he's repeating himself over and over again. That when the wicked came against me, they stumbled and fell. They stumbled and fell. That God, David looked back and remembered how God had proven himself in the past, times when wicked men surrounded him, and yet it was they who stumbled and they who fell. And this is an interesting quote I came upon, and this is in one of the commentaries. My favorite commentary on the Psalm, it's this one. It's a Concordia commentary. Unfortunately, I only have the first 50, but this quote, and I love it, and this is in reference to David, that this isn't the joy of a man in a comfortable monastery. This is the song of a man who knew God's goodness even in danger and despair. That even in danger and despair. And he says that the evildoers eat up my flesh. It's believed to be kind of a Hebrew idiom for their speaking gossip and lies about him. That and in the end, what happened, it was they who stumbled and fell. And, you know, that just brings my mind to John 18, where Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, he just spoke to the men arresting them, and they all fell. That God's breath, Christ's breath, causes the enemies to fall. And in verse 4, now verse 4 for me is the kind of heart of the psalm, and this is the you know, I probably will preach on this tomorrow. I'm thinking Psalm 27, but this is, Lord, and for the one reason I think verse 4 for me, I like things that are simple, and maybe you're like me from time to time. There are times when things get so chaotic, and you just say, I just wish I could just be shown exactly what I'm supposed to do, right? Who amongst us wouldn't love Aaron's staff, that we could ask God a question, put it in the ark, and take it out, and depending on if there's things growing on it or not, we know we had the answer, a definitive yes and a definitive no. Well, unfortunately, brothers and sisters in Christ, we don't always get that. Sometimes we do, but not always. And so here, pay attention to what David is saying here. Because he's in verse 4, he's showing us how to really prioritize our whole lives. And this is what he says. One thing have I asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. So David says, one thing have I asked, that I will seek after. One thing, David says, I'm going to dedicate my life to seeking after, and that's this, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. I mean, doesn't it kind of remind us of Solomon when God offered to give him anything he wanted, and he chose wisdom to discern good and evil so that he could properly rule the people? Here David's saying, look, it's one thing have I asked of the Lord, that I will seek after. He's going to dedicate his life to one thing, that he'll dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of his life. That David's heart, there's this single desire, because David knows that salvation is found in communion with Yahweh, in communion with God. And where is God found? He's found in the sanctuary amongst his people. We might say today, us New Testament people, On the other side of the resurrection, we of course know that the sanctuary of God occurs within us. The temple of God is within us. When we seek after God, we seek him in his word, and we seek him amongst the saints in light, amongst his people. And it's always disheartening to me when I visit with people and people who are struggling and seeking after God, and you know, I might ask, well, where are you trying to find him? And they're looking for him in all the wrong places. You know, if I lose my keys and I'm not going to drive down to somewhere I've never been and look for them, or I'm not going to go out to the woods, or I'm not going to seek them in my own desires. We're going to go where God wants to be found, and that's in his sanctuary. And that's where David says that I'm going to seek after him. But then celebration turns to contemplation. That's here, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord. And he uses different words to describe the house of the Lord: his temple, his dwelling, his tabernacle. David knowing, and know this, that the beauty of God and his power and his strength can be perceived today through eyes of faith. It can be perceived. And David thought of no greater occupation that he could spend his time with than seeking after the Lord where he wants to be found. And so this contemplation then turns to inquiry, and he adds, and to inquire in his temple. That David wished to go from just thinking on things and meditating and seeking to active asking. And, you know, these two acts complete this joyful employment of a soul communing with God, perceiving and then reflecting upon God's created goodness in our hearts. So that's all we're covering for today. I'm going to finish the rest of the psalm tomorrow, but I wanted to end on that note. And think for yourself, you know, when we go, you know, David, one thing have I asked of the Lord, that I will seek after him, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. This is an active faith, seeking God where he will be found. In the promises, the promise we have is not that we will not suffer, not that we will not struggle, but in the midst of trials, in the midst of tribulation, God will bless us with peace and this active faith that he gives us, but doesn't want to be stagnant. Doesn't want to be stagnant. Just the other day, I had the absolute honor of being with someone who is in their last days, and just talking about things. And the person had just said to me, which is interesting, I find, and I find strength in this when I hear, and when I get to be with people who are on death's door, and I get to see their strength and their faith shine forth even in the midst of death. And this person had said to me, you know, what, and I asked if they needed anything. You know what they wanted to know? They wanted to know who they could pray for. They wanted me to tell them people I knew in my life or at our congregation or wherever who were struggling and who needed prayer. So this saint, in what is probably going to be close to their last moments, instead of worrying about where they were going, this person knows where they're going because of their faith, wanted to offer their prayers for other people in the moments of death. I only hope that when my time comes, I can have such thoughts, that I can, up until the very moment that the Lord calls me up, calls you up, that you and I can join David and dedicate our lives to seeking the Lord, to dwelling in his temple all the days of our life. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. We're going to finish out Psalm 27 tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So I hope God blesses the rest of your day, and I will see you all very soon. God bless.